connect with each other and get a chance to do that. Ontario, there we go. We're international, folks. We've got Seattle, we've got Taos, we've got Nashville, Tampa, Cincinnati. We've got Seattle, we've got Taos. Oh, we've got my own voice playing back on the live stream. Just as a quick heads up, we are going to be live streaming the event, so if you would rather not have your face showing, that's completely okay. If you're happy for that, then that's great. And we'll probably have a few more folks joining as we continue with this. Welcome, Richard. Welcome, Kashif. Great to see some familiar faces and some distant faces and so many people from all over the world. And we are waiting on Lisa, who's going to be our keynote speaker. Oh, who's in the waiting room. Welcome to Zoom. Oh, we've got everyone's coming in. It's 2 minutes past. Here we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Richard, how are you doing? How's life going for you?
I'm well, thanks. Yeah.
For those
Great.
for those who don't know, Richard's the author of the Typewriter Revolution, and is sort of, I think, one of the first folks who started gathering all of us weirdos together and convening and finding these links. Um, how's the time travel project going? I've been seeing
Oh,
people
yeah, I'll
use.
show you. I don't have very good light here, but this is out now. And Matilda Ann there contributed something to
Yeah.
this volume. It's called Backspaces, and it's all about traveling back in time to the heyday of typewriters. It's got some poetry, but it's mostly short stories. There's little art and photo, and all the text is actually typewritten. So it's scans of typewritten images. Plus, there's a typewriter, playing a role in every story. So um, all the typewriting you could want, and it costs under $8 because we don't make any profit from it. So if you're interested, it's on Amazon.
And there's Matilda's coffee.
There
Matilda
I'm at.
Ann.
Yeah, there's mine. Yep. I
Awesome.
got
Oh,
this
there it
Oh
is.
well,
in. Yeah, and this is the one that Richard actually sent me. So I've got a nice little note from him that comes through there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Even though I'd already ordered 2 of my own copies. So
cool. Well, welcome to this space. Welcome everybody. I'll just do a quick recap of kind of what's going on and what to expect today, and we're gonna see where it goes. This is our first time doing this. I hope it's useful. Let me know if there's more stuff that would be more useful that we can do. I am really excited to be organizing and thinking about all of us weirdos as sort of a block, as a unit, as a group of people who have force and agency and power and all that stuff. Um, Sold out. Me and a poet locked out. Uh-oh. I'm gonna deal with that in 1 second. Um, I'm gonna invite everybody before we begin. If you would like to rename yourself, feel free to put pronouns in your name. Feel free to put if you have an Instagram handle or somewhere we should find you. And if you can also just put in the chat where you're coming in from, and feel free to share any social media handles, any websites, etc. One of my big goals for today is that this is a chance for us to um, it's a chance for us to get to know each other. It's a chance for us to connect beyond this, to do work with each other, and to get to know all of the different projects that folks have going on across the country and across the world, which is super exciting. All right, so welcome officially to our first Typewriter Poets Roundtable. This is a meet and greet, a brainstorming session, a chance to build solidarity and community, and to meet like-minded weirdos and activists and art makers. This is not a marketplace to sell or self-promote or a job fair. So would love for you to bring your projects, bring your needs. But as literary folks, let's leave the hard sells for the books at home and save that for another time and for the DMs. – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – –– that hopefully will be accessible by everybody that will be using through this to take notes. It is editable by everybody. There's some of the questions that we're going to be discussing in here. If you have ideas that you're not able to express, I know there's a lot of folks on the Zoom. If there's any ideas that come to you afterward, this is a living document, and I'm excited to have it be a resource for us moving forward to be thinking about these questions together. What else do we need to do in the introduction? A quick moment of, yeah, let's go around, let's see, it's 4:07. Let's go around just really quickly, and Kat's here, hooray. If folks want to unmute, and we're gonna work on a popcorning system, we'll probably not get through everybody, but I'd love to have 5 or 6 people who are in the room just introduce yourself, say where you're coming in from, and if you want to just share what you do and how you got into it, which may be connected to why you're here, I'd love to hear some of these voices, and hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from everybody before the end. The way that the sort of format's going to work, we're going to do these introductions. We're going to hear from L.A. Marks, who's the founder of Ars Poetica, who's going to talk about, you had a great kind of 3-word pithy, what was your description for your keynote?
Oh, I think I actually changed it or evolved it. It's poetry, plague, and persistence.
Poetry, plague, and persistence. Yes.
It's going to be very uplifting.
We'll hold you to that. After the keynote, we'll have a little bit more time to talk as a big group and respond and ask Lisa Ann any questions that you have. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms so that we all have time to actually talk to each other and connect and get to know 3 or 4 other typewriter poets around the world. Then we'll rejoin the big group at the end, do a little recap, and be done before 2 hours are at, because that's about my capacity for Zoom. So I think that's my big spiel. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'm going to pass things over to... oh my God, Aparna, you made it. Can I pass things over to you to say where you're zooming in from and how you got started and what your typewriter practice is? And then if you can popcorn it to someone else, we'll go through about 5 people.
Is that me? Okay, I'm coming in from Providence, Rhode Island. I write for creative expression, and during these times, I've just been really getting into poetry. And so I found this event, was really excited to participate, and have been going to some open mics virtually. I will popcorn it to Zaina. Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Zaina. I'm coming in from Seattle, Washington. I'm originally from Ohio, so I was excited to see someone else here is from Cincinnati, Ohio. I am brand new to typewriters in general. I got my typewriter in June, my first one, and really started being active and sharing my poetry, I would say with the recent racial uprisings and resurgence of Black Lives Matter, it's felt really important to me to share my experience and find connection through both sharing about kind of the pain and fear and confusion, as well as really sharing my Black joy as an act of resistance. So that's really where I'm at and what's important to me right now. Thank you for having me.
Snaps for that. Who are you going to popcorn, Zaina?
Yes, I am going to popcorn to an Instagram friend. Is it Kashif? Is that how you say it?
That is how you say it. Hello, everyone. I'm Kashif Andrew Graham on Instagram. He, him pronouns. On Instagram is KAG Writes. I'm a librarian here in Nashville. Very excited to be in the room with so many great artists and poets and activists. I have been collecting typewriters for several years now. My go-to is my Smith Corona Silent Super. And if you look at my Instagram page, you'll notice that I type a lot on, or all of my poems are on vintage catalog cards. And yeah, I write mostly, I call it activist protest poetry. I've lately been into this idea of queering scripture. So I'll take a scripture verse. I also went to seminary before I became a librarian. And I'll take it and destroy it, basically, queer it, make it, more inclusive and reinterpret it in my own way. So I've loved doing this, and I will go ahead and popcorn it to, oh my goodness, there's so many people. Joseph M. Jablonski, Walking Mall poet.
Hey everybody, my name's Joseph. I do poetry in Winchester, Virginia, as the Walking Mall poet. Believe it or not, I got started doing poetry out on the Walking Mall kind of as a little bit of a frustration at not getting accepted into MFA journals and things like that, but also having like typewriters and being cool about old and unique things. My wife, I have to give her credit for coming up with the idea. And then I've been doing it for a year and a half, started Valentine's Day 2019, and it's just been a super blast. There's so many people here that I know through Instagram handle, and it's so great to see them in person and be able to see their faces and everything. I'm gonna pop it over to a friend, Marshall, Dream Poet for Hire.
Hey y'all, my name's Marshall James Kavanaugh, Dream Poet for Hire on Instagram. So I'm based, I guess most recently in Philadelphia, and then before that, Taos, New Mexico, and then again now I'm back in Taos, New Mexico. I kind of bounce around a lot, so I pop up in different cities all around the country, and I kind of enjoy. I guess I'm very influenced by the beats. So I like the idea of like taking poetry on the road and bringing it into the streets, and just really I don't know, exciting people with like, you don't have to. Poetry is not something that's like inaccessible. It's something that we can all access out in the open and in our communities. And yeah, I've been doing this for. I like to say I've been doing it for 8 years, but it took me about like 4 of those years to get really confident with it and actually, go out into the street as opposed to just go to like, something like an art festival that was already happening and where the audience would be like ready for it. So yeah, I've been doing it for the last 4 years, pretty full time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marshall. Shout out to those who've got their typewriters in frame. I see you, Jack. I see you, Kat. I see you, Kevin. We're gonna have a little bit more time to kind of sink in and get to know each other's work and each other's practice as we go. But it is 4:15, and my job on this Zoom, as far as I'm concerned, is to keep us on schedule. So I am so excited to pass things over to the typewriter, poet, and activist, and scholar and human, who I think has just I am consistently in awe of her and the work that she's done in building a community around this and in making it feel like a cultural force to be reckoned with. And so I am really, really excited to hear. Please give some love in the chat for LA Marks of Ars Poetica.
Oh, hi, it's me. Hope this framing is decent for y'all. And also not to undermine your moderation, Brian, but in the name of sort of radical uncensorship, if anyone wants to just be unmuted while I'm talking so that your like life sounds can come through, just like feel free to be unmuted.
You mean we can interrupt you?
Yeah, you can just like really that. Like,
all right, good.
I feel like we're like in the same room, and if I'm like blah blah blah, and you're like, that's a dumb idea, you can just like, because I'm too far away from the computer to like see the chat. So if you want to say something to me, I can't see it, so you have to just shout it out. I see the chat still going.
Your dress is beyond cute. Does it have pockets?
It doesn't have pockets, but it's vintage AF, and the fabric just goes on and on like forever. It's just, I am like a human picnic.
It's awesome.
Okay, well, so I do have some pretty hard-hitting information to share with you. I have in front of me my typewriter. I have my White Claw poured into an engraved glass that says the word poet on it. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? It's like hard to see. And I've got the old iPad here, so I'm really like decked out. And I want to make this a little bit interactive. So there's going to be a couple times where I'm going to ask you a question and you'll shout it out or put it in the chat, and I won't be able to see it in the chat, but I'll see it afterward. So first thing, I encourage you all to either say in the chat or just shout it out. How many typewriters do you currently own or have in your possession? Just give me an idea.
4.
You got 4? What was yours?
62.
13.
62.
Somewhere over 30.
That was me. I said 62.
Oh,
48.
32 to 6.
see, I only have 17, and now I feel like I'm just like a poser. Should I just?
Yeah, but you break them all the time.
I break them. They're all over the world. I'm sure my parents have a few in their home. I have like, I just left New York and just like threw typewriters out as I was going to people that needed them. But I do have a couple of my faves in frame. I always go for the Smith Corona. I have this awesome German Olympia back here, which sadly came with no case. But it was a gift from El Granero Typewriter Company, who sent it to someone else who never picked it up. And they said, if you can just travel to Westchester to get it, it's yours. And I was like, goodbye. And yeah, I love typewriters so much. Please also feel free to just shout out your favorite machine in the chat as well, because I would love to look back at this later and just think about all the beautiful machines that I may never own or may collect one day. So as I mentioned to Brian, as we were starting, the title of my talk is Poetry, Plague, and Persistence. And I am going to touch a little bit on the art of poetry, which we are all so fond of and so driven by in our soul, the timeliness of this 100-year pandemic that we are living through, and also the value of what we do in a time of social revolution. So forgive me if I just read off of my notes for this first part, and then I'll become a little bit more extemporaneous later. I kind of wanted to really drive home this thesis, but for me, speaking to you all right now is hugely momentous, because I truly believe that the typewriter poet is the modern manifestation of perhaps one of the most fascinating human archetypes, which is the wandering bard, which has existed throughout all human history. I think we really carry a magical tool around with us everywhere we go. You know, you're in a foreign land with this sort of unmarked, mysterious box, and you're casting spells, telling truths, you're performing prayers, penning portraits of people, and really seeing everything. We are privileged in a lot of ways, and yet we have this sort of mystical, untethered nature. And I personally take comfort in knowing that I am a living archetype. I am one little link in a long chain, a lineage of writers who are the product of their environment, wherever that may be, all across the country and world in this case. I do not believe that history exactly repeats itself, but I do believe that it rhymes. And we typewriter poets are uniquely situated to make sure the verses document a diversity of truths of our time. So before I get to talking about, myself and a little bit about my journey, and especially the way that my craft has evolved in the past year, I wanted to talk to you guys about Philippe Morin-Frenot. Has anyone heard of Philippe Morin-Frenot? Shout it out if you have, because I would love to hear.
Could we get a spelling for that name?
It's spelled like Philip, Philip, Morin, Morin. Freneau is Freneau. And before you Google, no, he was not a typewriter poet, but he was actually dubbed. I'll tell you the name that he was given a little bit later in this short story. But so I take it no one has heard of him. That's awesome. Okay. And if you haven't, you're just chatting it because you're shy, that's totally fine too. And I will congratulate you later. But basically, I'm just going to give you a brief bio of him. He was the son of French Huguenot immigrants in New York City, born 1752. He tried a bunch of different careers and none of them stuck. And he finally decided to become a poet. And as the American Revolution was dawning, he was kind of like unsure about it and not really on board. And he went off to the West Indies and actually just like wrote nature poetry by himself for 2 years. And over the course of that time was like, you know, I do think that we should become independent from the British and we should start a revolution. He came back and actually became a ship's captain with the Revolutionary Army and was imprisoned by the British, was a prisoner of war in one of those crazy warships in New York Harbor where the Navy Yard is, wrote an amazing account of that moment. And if you'll forgive me, I'll actually read you a little bit of that. I heard a couple of you saying that you're into revolutionary poetry, so this could be relevant. He said, 300 wretches here denied all light, in crowded mansions pass the infernal night. Some for a bed their tattered vestments join, and some on chests and some on floors recline. Shut from the blessing of the evening air, pensive we lay with mingled corpses there. Meager and wan and scorched with heat below, we loomed like ghosts ere death had made us so. And I mean, wow. But it's kind of interesting because it's like the prisoner of war experience for him, especially because all of them got terrible diseases and fevers and flus, really makes me think a lot about like pandemic and plague. And he also wrote poems about plagues in New York at a later time. But his scathing account of his time as a prisoner of war and his fighting for the Revolutionary Army actually got him dubbed the name, the poet of the American Revolution. After the war, and the story is almost over, I swear, after the war, he went on to have a huge role in actually shaping the discourse of this brand new tiny baby country. Thomas Jefferson made him his personal translator and actually had him start a dissident newspaper in Philadelphia. And he then lived the entire rest of his professional days translating for Jefferson and writing scathing opinions of politics, and then retired, went back to nature poetry, and died freezing to death at sea at the age of 80. So honestly, like dream death sequence for me personally, like let me die frozen at sea at 80, please. Does anyone identify with that story? Does that like inspire anyone, or is it just so morbid?
It's pretty cool, but it's interesting that you actually have an ideal death sequence or death scene, because most people don't even think about it, and it's kind of annoying because I have a pretty specific idea for mine, but it's gonna be kind of difficult to accomplish because I was born in the wrong country, but whatever. So mine would be 45 to the heart, somewhere in my 30s. Yeah, I would be curious what other people have as their like death goals.
Honestly, like Brian, I think we should do this as like a recurring thing, and we could have like themes every time, and we could do one just on death poetry. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Basho, the great haiku poets, but they actually used to write death poems, like they would do their very best to like as their last breath, you know? Really,
Dickinson did it a lot.
Who?
Emily Dickinson.
Oh my gosh, yes, I think all of her poems are difficult. But so another question for you before I go into just, talking about myself, is I really wanted to know, for me, I have been writing a lot. I have changed almost everything about my life since the pandemic and the uprising against police brutality and racial injustice. And I've been writing about the pandemic, I've been writing about the revolution, and I want to know, are you writing about that? I know a lot of people are blocked and are doing other great work or are just not on the space. So just shout yourself out if you've been writing, and if you haven't been writing, also please don't feel guilty. I just want to get the idea if you're writing about this or not.
Hey, this is Marshall. Yeah, I would say more than writing, I've been like organizing. So working with other writers and creating spaces for like voices to be uplifted. Pandemic wise, same thing. It's like suddenly you have a bunch of performers that are unable to get in the street, unable to like show their face, unable to be like out in a performance space. So just organizing, creating live streams and different types of community spaces for people to meet and see each other.
Yeah, I've been doing a similar thing. We've been doing writing workshops, like prompted free writes with a time limit and accountability, because my obstacle has been to just get my ass down to writing and just get started. And also, well, I probably should have been doing it in a more literary format, but I've been advertising Jo Jorgensen pretty much everywhere I freaking go. And yeah, the date is coming, so make note of that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I thought a lot about quarantine and the way that people have been hiding away, and the way that so much of our art is about the intimate interaction and the one-on-one and the surprise and delight. And I found 5 personal challenges that I myself have struggled with, and kind of what the typewriter poetry response is. So challenges I've struggled with, and feel free to give me a snap or a yes or an amen if you've had this too. Number 1, overwhelm with digital, social media, technology, just screen time in general.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh goodness.
Number 2, a loss of a sense of time, like not knowing what day it is or how many hours have passed.
Very.
Yeah.
It's Thursday, March 216th.
Number 3, loss of connection to the body or to other people's body, just feeling a little bit alienated from physical presence.
Big time.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Number 4, this feeling of having like too many thoughts, but not enough like inspiring good thoughts that you actually want to do something with.
No.
Too many thoughts, but not enough action. That's for me.
Too many thoughts, and exactly where do you put them? It feels like a kind of storm in my head sometimes. And then lastly, and this is like a little bit vulnerable, but I'm, here we are. You guys are my people, so I can share with you. Feeling a little bit helpless because of my non-essential nature. Anyone else?
Elaborate. What do you mean by that?
Well, the idea that there are essential workers, there are grocery store clerks, there are medical professionals, there are the people that actually have to keep going. The U.S. Postal Service, and I am
teachers. Teachers.
Exactly. And I am not a teacher professionally. I am not a doctor, and so I feel very non-essential. Has anyone struggled with that? Maybe I'm alone.
As a retired person, no.
I'll just say, I'm sorry, you were going to respond. I'll just say that for me, I think about it as, I think this is sort of the pastoral training of the early years, even though I never actually became a pastor. In some ways, this is like my sort of ministry. And I think about it as providing a spiritual service almost, that people need words and that words can be healing. So that's the way that's kept me going at the very least when I thought this is pointless. And I kind of shared that same thing of like, I didn't feel essential, but yeah, I've been thinking about words as sort of healing. So that's what's kept me engaged at the very least. But it does, I share that, it does feel like an overload.
I think that, yeah, I resonate with that really strongly, Kashif. I feel like one of the things that I've been encouraging artists to do kind of across the spectrum, at least from a fundraising perspective, is to get really conversant in the language of mental health and to frame what we're doing as a public health intervention. And I'm working, fingers crossed, working with a group of grad students in Michigan to actually do some data gathering on people interacting with custom poetry and see if we can get numbers to support that, because that's a doctory thing to do.
Oh my gosh, I've wanted to do that for years. That's so brilliant. I mean, the experience is so magic. I could go on for hours, but I would probably cry. Yeah, so that's the context that I'm thinking about. And Brian did ask me to share a little bit about kind of my journey. And I don't know how many of you have ever even like heard of me or Ars Poetica or any of the work that I've done. So I am gonna just tell you my story, because I think we can all identify with the nature of how healing it is to just get to tell your story and be heard. And so I'm gonna just be here to soak up your attention, and I really hope that it is interesting or inspiring, or at least not too long for you. So I think back to the first time I ever wrote a poem, and actually my parents have one of my very first haiku that I wrote in elementary school about my dad being a redwood tree, and with a full illustration. I'm from Northern California, and remembering learning what a haiku was and clapping with the syllables, and the way that language takes on a completely different power when you are molding it to become something else other than just what falls out of your head when you're not thinking about it. The first time I wrote a poem on demand on a typewriter for a stranger was so many years later. I did not pursue any of the creative writing degrees. I'm sorry, my phone beeps because I'm on a sound here. I actually have a typewriter poet performing at a wedding right now. A small COVID-proof outdoor distanced wedding. She said, "Thank you, done, stayed an hour over. Bride requested I stayed later. They loved it." Poetry's alive, y'all. Poetry's alive.
Woo!
Okay. Sorry about that. I would only share that since I think you guys would relate. Has anyone done poetry at weddings? Who does poetry at weddings?
Oh yeah.
Bunch of people? I know Brian does.
I do that as well.
So anyway, okay, back to my story. Oh my gosh, I just finally built up the momentum. I wrote a poem on demand on a typewriter for a stranger the first time when I was living in Washington, D.C., and it wasn't even my idea. It was a friend of mine who ran an arts organization who was paid by a condominium board to put on a performance art festival. And she was like, "You get all your friends out there, we'll get a bunch of crappy old typewriters and we'll just write poems for all these like drab, boring, suburban, Northern Virginia professionals, and we'll just blow their minds." And that was like 2012. And that experience changed my life. Doing that, doing poetry as a service, like you said, Kashif, completely changed the trajectory of my life. I was actually in grad school to go to work for the State Department in Washington, D.C. I wanted to be a diplomat, and that changed everything for me. The experience of seeing the look on someone's face when they receive your poem, I realized that that was just it for me. The first time that I actually got booked as a professional poet to type poems at an event was another hugely momentous occasion for me, and something that I reflect a lot on right now as we are not really getting booked very much. I'm sure some of you feel that pain of missing those inquiries coming in of people curious about your art form and wanting to see you. That was very soon after the first time that I ever did poems live on demand. The next huge turning point for me was when I got to quit my full-time job to become a full-time typewriter poet. And any of y'all out there who are full-time typewriter poets, whatever that means for you, know how much money do you earn. If that's like your full-time thing in your mind, in your heart, shout yourself out in the chat right now. Give yourself a hug, give yourself a whoop out loud, you know, just
full time, baby.
Yes.
2016.
People just
Last month.
Month. Wow.
Yeah.
So crazy being, I sometimes I feel like I am a diplomat, like I am an ambassador for what is possible. The most whimsical, unbelievable thing to people that I meet so often is that you could be a professional poet surviving off of the word that you write, the word that you write in collaboration with someone else. And that transition for me was just so momentous. And whether or not I'm always a full-time professional poet, I don't care. The fact that I did it and I got to live on my own terms is so huge. So even if you're only a full-time poet for a week, just cherish that. The next huge turning point for me was the 2016 election. And I have to say, I'm actually quite ashamed, I suppose, to admit that that was the first time that I really thought about applying poetry to resistance. And I kind of took things for granted up until that time. I really did. I was very interested in politics and international relations up until that point, but I had never really put my name on the line for anything. And after the 2016 election, I was, deeply moved and concerned. And I started a project called Poems for Senators. You might have seen it. It did get some press coverage, and I spent 100 days researching and writing a poem for every single senator currently serving. And I learned a lot about the way that the American government works. And I published them all online, and I then did kind of like illustrations, and of course they were all typewritten, and I auctioned them off for a nonprofit organization called She Should Run, which is a nonprofit that helps women get into civic service and make the first step to run for political office. I'm extremely passionate about women being represented in our elected government because they are obviously very underrepresented, and they also outperform, no offense, our male-bodied friends here, but they outperform males so much in government in terms of the ability to cross over the aisle and deal with crisis. I'm sure some of you might have seen the stats showing the countries that did the best responses to COVID all have women prime ministers. So Poems for Senators was really
project sounds awesome. Thank you for doing that Poems for Senators project.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it was just, honestly, I'm thrilled that I got to learn, because just, and funny that the Poems for Senators will actually come back around later as I'm wrapping up this little bio of my journey, because one of the senators that I wrote about, I did not know at that time would become a true thorn in my side. Can anyone guess who it is that I'm referring to? Just guess who's the most hateful senator that we have. Just throw a name out there.
Good old Mitch.
Yeah, so many to choose from.
Mitch.
So many to choose from.
What the F?
Thank you so much. So now I'm getting a little bit worked up because I'm thinking about Mitch McConnell. But anyway, up until this point, I had been working with 2 business partners, and I really had a come to whoever the deity of your choice moment and realized that I wanted to focus on mission-driven work, and that was my calling. I realized this was like a huge divide between myself and my business partners, was that I needed to use this as my vocation and as something to be part of a movement, not just as a business. And so I actually split from my business partners, and that's when I started Ars Poetica as a sole female entrepreneur. So my lady friends that are out there that are doing this on their own, I just feel you so much, and I want to just take a moment to say, any of you that are on the feminine spectrum or queer or BIPOC or POC, or anyone who feels that they have things like a little harder than normal, if you need mentorship, if you need help, if you need support, if you want me to just make an Instagram post about you or just anything at all, please just reach out to me and I will support you. I never could have guessed how much harder it would be to go into the world without two white guys as my like bouncers or something. So please do reach out anytime. Next.
Sorry, how so?
What's that?
How so? Just, I've never had a white male partner to, so I don't know how, like, tell me, because I don't know what I don't know.
Thank you for asking. And again, please anyone ask, and I am wrapping up, I swear, Brian. I know you must be looking at the clock.
You're good. This is great.
Sorry, Brian.
And we can almost even like sort of like start to move into Q&A and discussion. But like an example would be when you notice a trend that more people are unwilling to pay you the rate that you've expected for years. And that was something that I was shocked by, signing off on an email as a group of two guys and a girl, and then signing off on an email as just myself. I started to notice and be really concerned with a trend that people were not paying our presented rate as much. And I started to be very worried about that and wonder if that was because I'm a woman. That's just one example. There's also like that kind of old boys club feel sometimes when you're doing business. I don't know if any of you have ever felt this, where it's just like you see two men networking, but they're kind of like insider speak, maybe, whatever that is. It could be all the typical stereotypical masculine things, or just some unspoken thing that I don't understand. And then it's kind of like I walk in the room and it's like, oh, who invited her? That kind of thing. Does that help kind of give you a picture? Or cool.
I have a kind of interesting to add to this this discussion. So when I first started doing this back in 2015, it was prior to my gender transition. So to the general public, I was in a female body. And I can say firsthand, now that I am IDing as a passing cisgender white man, even though I'm a transgender man, I believe that, I get, mansplained to less. Men treat me differently. They treat me with respect. People pay what my suggested rate is. And I certainly, even when I was pre-transition, did not experience the sexual harassment and the boys club nature that a lot of my female identified friends that do this have. And I think like now it's like now that I know, it's like, I feel like a responsibility to be able to, use my voice, which has more like perceived power at this point. But yeah, it's been very interesting. Like I used to be like just seen as like, oh, the girl with a typewriter, and now it's like, I feel like I am, I feel like I've gotten a lot more opportunities and a lot more high paying gigs and a lot more respect and this and that. And yeah, it was just a very interesting experience to transition like halfway through doing Typewriter Troubadour.
I would love to read your memoir because I've heard that story from many people who have transitioned F to M, and it's just like, it's amazing across, it works across all industries. I do want to just touch on a couple of things I've done since COVID, and then let's just keep going on like, oh wait, sorry. Okay. I want to touch on what I've done since COVID. And I also had like a small exercise in mind that we could do together that I thought might be fun. So since COVID, I'll just briefly tell you, in New York City, where I lived until like a couple months ago, March 11th was like apocalypse day. Like it was just like, that was the day that everything shut down. All the gigs were canceled. The world became a new place. And I did not want to pivot. I did not want to try to figure out a different way to make it work as a business. I just had to like stop in my tracks and sit and be with how terrifying this was. And as I mentioned before, I felt so helpless and I didn't really know how to assist or provide any sort of relief. And I started asking one of my poets, what if I wrote poems for people in the hospital? Like that would be really great, right? Like, or like poems for essential workers, like to help them deal with stress. And then I was like, okay, well, how would I find them? And then I was like, okay, what about this? Everyone is having a life crisis right now. Everyone could probably use a poem. What if I invited everyone to just volunteer with me and we just wrote poems for a world on pause, requestable for free on the internet, delivered electronically, either via being typewritten or a video of the poet writing. And we started sharing that, and it was unreal, the response. I got people around the world writing in, not just a request, which was very popular. We wrote almost 1,000 poems and we're still doing it. But so many people writing in saying, can I please help? Like, I realized that so many poets were actually as distraught as I was and wanted to just pitch in. And so we just made a huge Google Doc where anyone could go in and just choose a poem, write it up, and send it out to the person. And it became this amazing, totally decentralized, anarchist, radical, just like, you want to help? Here you go, go for it. And it was just unbelievable, the response. So we are still doing that. If any of you want to participate, you know, the requests are very, very slow now because I'm not focusing on that because, as I will say in a moment, I'm focusing on the election right now, but it is out there. So we do get a request every day or so. Since June, when the revolution, the Black Lives Matter movement got its resurgence and the protests began and people started really, myself being very much one of people, started finally saying, we can't ignore this anymore. I realized that I wanted to put my energy toward politics. I realized that we were in a complete crisis, running off the edge of a cliff. And so since June, I have been working in politics. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, fighting against the true like mastermind of everything that has gone wrong with the United States government, as far as I'm concerned, you know, on a more legislative scale, Mitch McConnell. I'm volunteering with Amy McGrath, who's actually a very moderate Democrat who ended up winning a competitive primary against Charles Booker. But who is a very much more like progressive person that a lot of artists like us probably would have preferred. But Amy McGrath is a very, very solid, really wonderful person who will make a night and day difference in our government. If Mitch loses to her, it will be like the biggest, pardon me, I'm gonna make an obscene gesture. It will be the biggest to him and his like 34-year reign of terror. And we have been hosting a weekly poetry and music open mic on Zoom and in a small outdoor setting for people that are in Louisville. Artists and progressives and people that are volunteering with the campaign and concerned about politics are coming to just share their thoughts and ideas with the blessing of the campaign. And that has been huge. People, it's Kentucky focused, of course, but you can all join in and share your poems and just talk with us about what elections you're caring about. So I'll share the info to that afterward. But that is another huge thing. Also, we started a series called BIPOC Voices on our Instagram and our blog, which focuses on artists, activists who are doing something important that just needs to be elevated. So I have a curator for that project. If any of you are interested in submitting to that, every feature gets a $50 honorarium for being a part of it, and a feature on our Instagram and on our blog with link backs, which if any of you are doing the typewriter entrepreneur game, you know those link backs are where it's at. And that's what I'm going to be working on for the next 44 days, or however many days it is now until the election. I'm exclusively focused on trying to get us through this. And Amy McGrath has a really long shot chance. It doesn't look great for her, but actually very sadly, but notably with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, more people who were not ready to engage are suddenly realizing this is even bigger of a crisis than they thought, and are engaging already. I've seen this over the course of the weekend. So just doing the political work with the poems is where I'm at right now. And I'm so grateful to all of you for being out there and continuing your art, because we have got to document this time, and we've got to be visible, and we've got to keep sharing empathy, because I think empathy at the core is what drives what we do and what will heal our country and reverberate throughout the world. Thank you so much.
You say everybody's welcome.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, can we unmute and give Lisa Ann like a big whoop and round of applause? Thank you so much.
Yay!
Always learning something new.
Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot that I wanted to do a funny little exercise. Do we have 2 minutes to do this little exercise?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to share my screen to do it. So I told Brian that I thought it would be funny if we did like a Mad Lib style poem, but then I realized that would be like really hard with, you know, all of us in such different places. So what I did was I wrote a kind of teeny tiny Mad Lib form for a haiku with a bunch of blanks. And so you can actually, so you don't have to put a word in every blank, but that's like where the options are. And so you can make a haiku with this little skeleton and maybe share it in the chat, or if you have your typewriter in front of you, just like type it up. That could be a really cool thing to see what people do with this. I've been teaching a weekly therapeutic poetry class, and I put a timer on always. So let me just put a 90-second timer.
Amazing.
Machines at the ready.
Hold on, wait for it. Okay. Timer is on. You have 90 seconds. I'll do it. Time's up. Does anyone want to read theirs? You can also put it in the chat. Actually, everyone should definitely put theirs in the chat if they want, because then it will be recorded. But yeah, maybe a couple can read theirs out loud, and then we'll pass it on to the next thing.
I would love to throw mine in the pot.
Awesome, do it.
All right. I never retract statements in 2020. Never and always.
Oh,
Wow, Kevin.
Also, Kevin, your scenery is amazing.
We'll gifts from the Fey realm.
Okay, anyone else want to read theirs?
Can I take a whack at it?
Yeah.
Never looking back. I, in 2020, lived history and hope.
Oh, so good. Okay, mine is very specific because I did something crazy yesterday and I bought a mountain dulcimer and started like teaching myself to play the dulcimer yesterday. It's the only instrument that's native to America. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I said, I never dreamed that in 2020 I would play dulcimer and weep. All right, well, that's it for me. I'm gonna take myself off video for a second just to like take a breather, but I'm still very much engaged and can't wait to hear what's next.
Amazing. Oh my God. Thank you so much for getting us writing and getting us into that space. I'd love to open things up now, and we're gonna chat for maybe just 10, 15 minutes. I'd love to hear what folks are doing. How has your work changed in this time? What stayed the same? Thank you so much, LA Marks, for giving us a little bit of a roadmap in terms of that discussion of thinking about where we started and where we've ended up. And I mean,
Brian, can I just leap on and say something really fast? It's Linda Ravenswood.
Never, Linda Ravenswood. God damn. Yeah, of course you can.
I just wanted to thank Lisa Ann so much and tell you, Lisa Ann, that I also have a mountain dulcimer. And as you know, because you've hired me, dude. So I say that the first thing that we do again together is do like a typewriter dulcimer gig. What do you think? At a yoga studio.
I only do lap instruments. So I'm like, put the typewriter.
That's it.
That's it. Oh, thank you so much for telling me that. I will reach out to you after to get advice.
Woo!
Do you have your dulcimer on you right now, Linda Ravenswood?
I could have it in like 30 seconds.
Oh my God. Maybe at the end of this, we could have a moment of dulcimer to like play us out. What do you think?
Maybe I can like pancake it, like the dulcimer on one side, my Olympia on the other, and do kind of a performance art. What do you think?
Please, Lord, yes.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Linda, I wonder, since you're spotlighted right now, I wonder if you want to talk for a second about the LA Press and sort of the transformation in your work over the last couple of years from like
sure,
event poet to curator, because I feel like you've had a similar journey in some respects.
Oh, absolutely. And it has a lot to do with exactly what Lisa Ann was saying about the girl with the typewriter versus the man with the business plan. And probably one of the main catalysts, aside from, altruistic thoughts and helping to uplift others, because as you know, when you start curating events, it's no longer about you, it's about other people. But the main catalyst, I think, originally was because that was happening for me, the girl with the typewriter versus the man with the business plan. So that was my antidote to that world that I was meeting. Really lovely, well-meaning people all along the way, super supportive, wonderful friends that I have to this day, but also being in the, out there in the spotlight and in the business world with this, art load. I started seeing how really oppressive it is to be a girl with a plan instead of, the uplift that you receive when you're a guy with a plan. And it's weird and wonderful, and it's an interesting road to hoe, but I'm not complaining. Yeah, so something really cool came out of it. Many cool things like the LA Press. So toddle on over if you want to the losangelespress.com and see what cool uplift has begotten. And submit your stuff. We have all kinds of prizes and scholarships and grants, and in the the other real world, we had lots of opportunities for live events. So maybe we will again someday. Yeah. So thanks for the spotlight, Briola. And congratulations to all the typewriter poets.
Oh my goodness, what was the thing that you said? I'm looking for it because it's in my book because it was so smart. It was part of your mission for the LA Press about like histories, and I'll find it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm all about history, as you know.
I know we've got a few like typewriter poetry sort of mainstays in here, so I don't know. I think popcorning is maybe the way to do it, but I'd be so curious to hear from like Abby Mott about how you're doing and what your work is looking like. And then Shane, I know you had some really fascinating things in comments that you'd been talking about, and I'd just love to hear more from you as well. And also like pipe in at any point. Like this is just me making there not be awkward Zoom silence. Like I am in charge as long as you leave me in charge, and then I gratefully bow out.
Hi, Brian, and hi, everyone. So when the pandemic began, I started live streaming on Instagram, and that worked out for me for about a month or two. And I was
wonderful when you did it, and it did wonderful things for my soul, and thank you for doing it. They were brilliant nights of poetry.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it was really fun, but the money I was getting through it was starting to dry up a bit. So I ended up getting another job making PPE masks for a small company called Colorado Masquerade. And so I learned how to sew on an industrial sewing machine, and now I did that 40 hours a week for a few months.
Wow.
Since then, that company kind of went under, and so now I'm looking for a phone banking job or something. I haven't been focused on poetry as much just because of needing just immediate needs need to be met at the moment. And I think my Instagram following isn't like quite high enough for me to really make it happen that way. So I don't know. I am writing still, though. I've been working on a book this whole year, and I just started storyboarding it more officially the other day, and I'm taking some workshops. So I'm really hoping that early next year I'll have something in print.
That's awesome.
I would like to do more typewriter poetry stuff. Like being here, it's actually like, oh wow, I forgot how much I loved doing it. Like it's been really sad not to just go out on the street or work an event. I was starting to really make some headway in like the local like event industry here, and was getting gigs left and right, and everything fell apart.
Chris asks, where are you based, Abby?
What's that?
Where are you based?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Cool.
Have you, I'm a teacher, and you know, we're doing everything online right now. Have you considered talking to any of the districts, maybe starting volunteering for the kids? Need more options. They need things more inspirational and early. We're doing social emotional learning. They're finally putting an emphasis on it. So poetry would really, really help because the kids are having a hard time. We all are, you know.
Yeah.
But that's an area that really needs a lot of people, a lot of art people to get in there. And there's money there. We just have to tap into it. So.
Yeah, I'd be curious to talk to you more, or as a group, as to how to go about doing that. Like,
sure.
Yeah. It's been, I don't know, it's just been hard during this whole time, just with mental health and everything. Just
well, working with the kids and seeing the lights go on, that will be great for your own mental health. You know what I mean? It's really, and online teaching is not, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. Some of my students are doing better than they would otherwise. So, and we're all taking a new step into education. And I think we would have never gotten education shaken up like this and opened up to really take a good look at what needs to change if we hadn't had this.
Yeah.
I so appreciate that, Gwen, and that's been really resonant with me. I'll share. I haven't since sort of typewriter poetry stopped. I've been mostly zooming with students and working on poetry with them, and that's been so essential for me, and hopefully good for them too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you're interested in helping us as an industry figure out how to pitch our local school districts, I'm sure there are various folks on this call who would be into having that follow up.
Yes, I would. I would. I don't have a plan at this moment, but I certainly do have a rough idea of what to do.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in talking more about that.
Okay, great.
Cool.
That's super generous. Thank you.
Mhm.
Shane, I wonder if you want to jump in. I know you had some, I don't think we've met, hello, or I think I've seen your face, but like not spoken, but you just had such interesting kind of perspectives coming from the Children's Hospital, all of that in Seattle, it looks like in the comments. And I just wonder if you want to speak to your experience right now.
Yeah, I started doing the typewriter poetry in 2015 and got 2 years in where it was pretty close to my sole income. And then I just gigged after that. And now I'm the last few years, I've just been working at Seattle for the city in their arts and culture district at Seattle Center underneath the Space Needle. And so I've gotten some insights into a lot of how that world works. But when I first came in to doing the typewriter poetry, I had seen a local typewriter poet years prior and was shocked, was like, what is this? This is insane. And it took me probably 4 years to actually like sit out on a street corner with a typewriter. But I had, right prior to that, I had been working for 3 years as a behavior interventionist, as a licensed mental health counselor in a crisis clinic setting with kids. And it was super, super informative to how I approached interviewing people on the street. And I know that there's so many, there's as many different styles and ways to approach typewriter busking, poetry busking. Some people just ask for the words, right? And just take a word and run with it. And I spend like 15 or 20 minutes interviewing folks and really like asking them questions and digging deep. And that all comes from the behavior interventions I was doing with teenagers in these clinic settings and really leaning into their limbic systems and really like learning how to observe, empathetically observe their emotionality and kind of be able to ask curious questions to help that person interrogate themselves a little bit further.
What sort of questions do you ask, Shane? I'm really curious what that looks like.
So someone comes and says love, right? And you're like, okay, love, here we go. But it's like, what is it? You know, what are you referring to? And it's really conversational, because if you start interviewing somebody and they feel like you're actually giving them a physical, like everything's shut down. So it's really about having a conversation and having that human interaction and starting to discuss like, what do they mean? And sometimes you have to watch because the person is standing right next to them. You have to be like, you got to go away, you know, like we've got to talk here about the situation. And, you know, it's figuring out who the love interest is and what is the quality of the concern around the love. Is it new love? Is it lost love? Is it changing love? And really just continuing to ask further and further into the personal so that that person continues to reveal the context of their situation. And at some point for me, I get enough information to type a poem because I have enough of like the scope of the story. And the other thing that is attached to this, because I was just coming from doing work that it was vocational for me and like mission driven in terms of the community service, that's how I felt sitting on the street, was that as a poet, like a working class poet, proving value by the fact that I'm being utilized on a corner. It was a service. And that's I don't know that everyone approaches it like this is a public service in the public commons, but I was like, I felt like I was getting away with murder somehow. Like I had tried so many other ways in art to make money, and all of a sudden I could make legitimate money working honestly, doing poetry without fronting. And it was shocking.
Totally resonate with that. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so happy that you're on here. I love the idea of like service poetry, and I think about that and talk about that. I found the Linda Ravenswood quote. She says that the work that we do and the work that she's doing with the LA Press is a balm against erasure. And I love that idea so much. Like, Jesus, what?
That costs $5.
I'll Venmo you. We've got a couple more. I mean, we've got everyone here who I want to hear from in the main chat, but I'm also conscious of time. I wonder if we want to just do a quick little like round robin. Like I know Chris, Poetry Fox, we've talked sort of via Instagram but never in person. Everyday People, Typewriter Poetry, Raul in India. I would just love to hear like a moment of like what brought you here and what your work is looking like. And then we'll divide into breakout rooms and get to actually like chat in depth with, you know, compadres, but just to get a little bit more of who's in the room.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Brian. You know, I just like everybody there, I haven't been gigging a lot. I'm based in North Carolina, and a lot of the time when I'm writing, I'm wearing a giant fox mascot outfit, and I've always sort of written typewriter poetry my whole life, but haven't really done it publicly. And then somebody gave me this costume as a joke gift one year, and I thought I have to do these things together, and it just really seemed to work. And I mean, after listening to what Shane said, it's really interesting to be this like a giant fox with a typewriter, because it totally changes the dynamic. I'm very differently approachable than if I was a guy sitting there with a typewriter, you know. And because sometimes when I'm performing as a human, people will kind of they'll give me a wide berth and sort of give me the side eye. But if there's a fox, they come up and say, what is going on here, you know? And it's I think it really disarms people in a certain way, and they show me a lot more about themselves just right off the bat, because they just don't have any expectation or idea what the hell is going to happen. So it's been an interesting thing to have this other persona and this costume to work in. And you know, I pull up the head to read a poem to somebody, so we make eye contact. But when I'm writing, the head comes down and I'm just a giant fox. So it's kind of entertaining in that way. But you know, I've been doing, I think during this pause, I've been doing a lot more organizing. I'm also a writer and a sort of visual arts and performing arts critic in this area. And a lot of, I've been writing a ton, but a lot of time I've been spending really kind of working with other artists in other media, talking about like what are the opportunities here in this weird year for us to start new things and change new ideas and connect with people in totally different ways. So there have been a lot of like meetings around fire pits and things like that, and just talking and note taking and talking and note taking. And you know, it's been a strange year, as you know, but it seems like there are a lot of things that are about to start. Some of them are poetry things, most of them aren't. But it's been, you know, it's been interesting. I'm sure that some of you who do a lot of gigs are maybe starting to see some of that, the first bit of a thaw, you know. Maybe you're starting to get some emails or calls. I'm starting to do some weddings and some other gatherings and some Zoom things. So it's starting to pick up a little bit, but you know, I'm feeling like I'm going to be spending more time in the next year being a part of other people's endeavors than sort of leading off solo on my own stuff. And I'll have to find that balance. But thanks for the time. I want to hear what other people are doing.
Oh, super appreciate that. I just had the thought that you're like the expert in how to do poetry with a mask. Like it feels so.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Like, how do you connect with someone and you're like, oh, I covered the whole thing.
Yeah, well, you know, I think of the head as the smallest studio space in the world, because I can just vanish for 45 seconds and bang out a poem, and like chaos can be going on all around, and I can be pretty oblivious in there. So it's pretty fun.
The head is the smallest studio space. That's so good.
I just observed that several people have mentioned that they've been organizing themselves. And that relates to me. I've just had this real need to have my workspace, my home, my classroom organized. And I just kind of wondered, what's that coming from? But it's common. Does anybody else want to share, had a thought about?
Yeah, so I've been actually very productive during this time. I have been going out semi-regularly since April, but I used the whole quarantine as like an excuse to really dive into some projects that I had been procrastinating over. As I mentioned in the chat, I have a new book out called Poetry Saves Lives, which is all typewriter troubadour poems that are focused on like healing and self-reflection. But I've also been finishing up the final read-throughs and edits and formatting of a couple of narrative books about my experience doing this. And I've just really appreciated the downtime. Like, I know the world is really crazy and stuff, but I'm just trying to make the most out of it and try new things. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I definitely feel excited for what is coming out into my library.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeremy. I want to just take a moment right now to open the floor if anyone else wants to throw something into the giant pot before we jump into breakout rooms. I have those breakout rooms all set, but yeah, if anyone else would like to speak, we'll just take the next minute, and if it passes in silence, that's cool. And then I'll open the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I was just thinking two things. That first of all, I never realized that poetry could be done for money, which is kind of an interesting angle to it. I always thought of it as I do the translation for money and the poetry and writing for posthumous recognition. So it's kind of interesting to listen to this perspective, this whole gig thing. And also, I heard the previous girl with the fancy hat, I forget names, but so
Gwen?
yeah, I heard her talking about, no, the younger one. I heard something about hearing everybody's thoughts and perspective and talking to people with different and diverse opinions and stuff. And I was wondering if that includes my crowd as well. As you can see from this cover, who do I mean by that? Because a lot of people think in terms of kind of binary system, and we are about to break that, or trying to anyways. And I just wanted to throw it out there that there's a third way if you want to.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump into?
Yeah, it's Linda again. I just want to say really quickly, I love the idea of Marcusson the elder and Marcusson the younger. I just love that kind of like Bruegels, or like the family business. I think that's really cute.
Thank you so
With-
much.
with
And
hats.
Honestly, we probably will do that sometime in our future. I was confused. Joe Jorgensen, is this person running for president, or the person that is that who Lila you're talking about?
Yeah.
So I will just say, I mean, I don't know how much we want to like get into talking politics, but like I'm really glad that you shared that, because I'm not aware of this third party candidate. I completely agree with trying to break the bipartisan system. All I'll say about that is that, you know, if 5% of people who would not have voted otherwise want to put their vote for a third party candidate, great because we need to slowly but surely crack that system. But if you're definitely going to vote and you're not sure who to vote for, go for Biden now. If you weren't going to vote at all, go for that third party person. You can definitely do that, but we've got to make sure that Biden wins first. Keep cutting away at that two-party system for sure.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's completely fair. That's completely fair.
You're breaking up, Leila. All right.
Maybe that's a
No, I was saying
actually break up into groups.
Yeah. Let's jump. Unless Raul, I just saw that you unmuted yourself, and I know that you hopped on at 5 a.m. in India. So I'm curious to hear how you wound up here.
4:30 a.m. actually. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I think I discovered this on Instagram, and I was so excited to sort of like just see everybody's faces. I've only seen you all through like your posts and Instagram handles, and yeah, I'm really excited. So wait, what was the question again? What am I doing?
Oh, I was just saying hi.
Oh,
and
okay,
that
yeah.
I'm happy you're here. That was mostly it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and open the breakout rooms right now. There's about 4 people in each breakout room. We've got 4 people here as well, so the live stream will continue to be here. Feel free to interact as much as you'd like in your breakout room. If you have to run, that's okay. I'll be monitoring it, so if you're like, I'm the last one in the breakout room, I'll move you to another one or see if we can bring you back. You can click exit breakout room and it'll bring you back to this main room. If you click exit the whole thing, then you'll leave the Zoom. So just be conscious of what that looks like. The questions that I'm interested in asking for those breakout rooms, talk about whatever you want. Here's what I'm curious about. With physical distancing in place, I'm curious how we're serving a public in non-traditional settings and how we're doing that through literature. I'm curious what responsibility typewriter poets and artists have as folks in dialogue with the public. And I'm curious about what we can do in this situation to foster connection and resilience. So just some little questions.
Brian, before we break out, I just wanted to ask, is there going to be, I see it says that we're recording. Is that a recording you could send out later so that we can all like look back over all this whatnot? Because I would love that.
100%. I will send out this recording. We are also live streaming to my site, which is there. It's .com, not .co. So the live stream will live up there as well, but I'll have the recording and the recording of the chat also. Thank you for that, Kevin. So plan is we're going to go into our breakout rooms for about 25 minutes, and then we'll come back here for the last 10, share out anything of interest that you feel like sharing out, and we'll close things out, and maybe Linda will find her dulcimer in that time and serenade us, but I don't know. No pressure. She's my friend. Otherwise, I wouldn't be like,
Please, Linda, please do it.
All right. My friends, breakout rooms are open. The folks who I believe are still in here, I'll just pose if you don't get an invitation to a breakout room, it's because this is your breakout room. Hello. I'll just pose the question of what sort of non-traditional settings are looking like for you right now that settings are over, and sort of what the work that we're doing is. All right, here we are.
Yeah, so thanks for making this happen, Brian. First of all, this is really neat.
Thank you, Richard. What I mean, you've been a sort of historian of this movement for so long. I'm curious, just what your first impressions are, kind of hearing where folks are at now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of devastating. Hey, Jeremy. Kind of devastating that we're in a time now where we can't be close to other people, and what you do is about getting close to other people. But there are ways around that. I mean, here we are being pseudo close, and I've seen pictures on Instagram of people actually going out there and they're wearing masks and so on, but they are typing for the public, so it's possible.
Kashif, have you been getting out at all, or have you mostly been working online?
I've mostly been working online. I mean, I still, go out, of course, and walk. I have my favorite coffee shop in Nashville that I'll stop in because the connection with people feels good, and I don't know, especially in this time, this like very polarizing time, it's great to walk into a coffee shop where everybody knows your name and people are happy to see you and they wave to you. So I've been doing that, but I feel the connection to people when I post a poem from across the country that message me or comment and thanked me for it. I feel like I have a whole community. So that's been great to discover. I didn't know that was a thing, and I've been thinking as of late that as I continue working and writing, whenever my first national book tour is, I will already know people in like Cody, Wyoming, or Pasadena, because they bought poems from me or messaged me or something. So that's really great. I think that's really been keeping me. But I have not I've not had to go and like sit in a park and write poems for people. But maybe that's something I might consider. Because I think the human connection, and being this proximity business is just such a valuable thing right now.
Totally. Yeah, I did my first in-person event again last month and kind of went and got tested before and after. It was for 10 people, but it was still a bit, it was indoors. That was an interesting experience, and I have a couple of things planned coming up around like book stuff. I have a drive-in reading planned that I think will be interesting that we wanted to do months ago and then canceled because of a resurgence in rates, but having people drive in and doing radio transmission to have a reading I think will be interesting. I have a Zoom event with then like a curbside book signing with a bookstore that I think will also, I'm just curious to see if folks come out. I think we're hungry to be in public space, and also some people are like over it. Some people are terrified. Some people don't think that anything is real. And so there's sort of this spectrum.
I think we're also seeing, the ardent supporters of the arts, I'm just so grateful for them. I think about our local movie house, the people who just make an effort. Like, they're like, sure, I could, watch this at home or use some online feature, but they make an effort to support drive-in. So I think when you do that, I do think people will support. It's really been great to see, all of the support.
Jerry, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to share my personal opinions on the whole COVID thing, but I will say this. I did do a little mini tour up to Portland where I was actually busking music. And I was happy to see that there wasn't very much pushback, because as like there's more regulations from the authorities as well as policing from person to person about like the whole mask or whether or not COVID is real or as intense as it actually is or whatever. I'm just really glad to see that there has been pushback, because I feel like I had more pushback from cops or business owners or concerned citizens like prior to COVID. People have been really thankful to see a poet out on the streets, and I have not been going out as much. I haven't been going to like the farmers markets where there's like thousands of people going through, but I have been, besides my trip up to Portland, been staying pretty local here in Ocean Beach and San Diego, and feel part of the community and welcomed by it. I do feel like the street is my favorite part of doing typewriter poetry. I have been doing, large events and online poetry for several years, and it's just not the same. Like, so I'm really, because not only, is it an act of service, but it's my only way of really making money. Because believe it or not, compared to busking music, can make so much more money doing poetry and feel more like connecting with people. But I don't know. I don't really know what's going to be happening in the future. I am kind of feeling like I'm personally in a bit of a transition where I want to focus more on my other writing and promote my other writing and promote my music. But the thing is that most people recognize me as Typewriter Troubadour because that's what I've been doing for so long. So I'm just kind of like in a transition of like, how am I going to bring all of these different fragments of myself into one thing, you know? So I just don't feel like I'm just like putting everything out all over the place. So I am excited the path that I'm on now by combining my music and my novellas that detailed the story of me doing this, and then continuing to write. But yeah, like as far as like how I'm staying safe, you know, it's like I wear my mask when I'm out, and you know, I have hand sanitizer, and people are doing digital currency more and more, so that works out. I have also opened it up to being just a donation of their choice rather than my former suggested donation of 10 to 20, just because I know that like people are struggling financially and I want poetry to be accessible. So that seems to be working still.
Those are really interesting adaptations to think about. Gwen, I'm curious what your kind of impression and interaction with this whole world is. Are you an English teacher by day? Oh no! And then we lost her. And then
she evaporated.
Oh no.
Then there were 4.
Richard, how have you seen? Because you're sort of oh, she's back. You're sort of, I don't know, the archivist of this whole broader typewriter community. I wonder if you've seen like what changes you've seen across the typewriter world in this moment.
Let me clarify. I'm not a typewriter.
Uh-oh.
You frozen?
It seems like your internet may be
Yeah, I just saw that happen, but
you're back.
Yeah, Lisa Marcuson is my daughter, and that's why, you know, I don't do typewriter poetry. I teach, and part of her Thursday. My thing keeps saying it's unstable. The internet's unstable, so it may happen again. But I really enjoy listening to all of you, and I've been listening to Thursday night, the bluegrass, and participating with that, and I just really can't advocate enough for our kids throughout the whole nation that they need you guys. You know, they need, you know, I'm more like bread and butter, and you guys are more like charcoal, and you know, so you need to do, you know, if you can reach out, and I'll also do more investigating what's the way to go about it. Need work, need artists, you know, and there is money in the school district, so we just have an administrator. That's all I have.
So as far as what I've been, I caught about half of that. You were breaking up a bit, Gwen, but
I don't know which part you missed. I was just saying that we've got to find that are available. School districts need more artists, more art. You know, that core, everybody knows that's everything that gets cut out. Money.
Oh man, I'm gonna play moderator, Gwen. I'm so sorry. You're it's cutting in and out quite a bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull the reins back, and hopefully we'll get to hear. Hopefully it'll stabilize, and we'll get to hear what you're saying. But it's just fragments at the moment. And then my front door opened all on its own. That was really interesting.
you want to check and see who's there?
I think it just was the wind. Go ahead though, Richard.
Yeah, you asked what I've been noticing in the typewriter world more generally, and just a couple. First, I didn't know what to say, but then I did think of a couple of things. That I've been writing more letters for one thing, and I know some other people have too, and it's just a really nice practice of sending somebody some physical evidence when so much of what we do now has to be mediated through the screen. And there's also another neat project that I've noticed. It's called One Typed Page. onetypedpage.wordpress.com. And this is just a guy who said, hey, if you want to publish a page of typed whatever, send it to me and I'll put it on, and so he does that. And a little community has built up there of maybe like 10 people who, from various places, who will contribute regularly every day. And they're talking to each other. They're in different countries. They have different opinions. The only thing they have in common really is a typewriter and a blog, but it works. So that's been kind of neat.
What what questions do y'all have for each other? I'm gonna do a quick bathroom run for a second, but I want to just open the floor.
Well, I will, Richard. I think that's so fascinating. I actually just ordered some more. Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me? Okay. I just ordered some more stationery, from eBay, some cool vintage letterhead, hotel stationery, random things, because I do plan to write some more letters. I think especially in this time, I think we've always known as typewriter poets, collectors, appreciators of the analog thing, all things analog. I think we've always known the value of the letter, but especially now, when you can't be with someone, to have something that they wrote or created and you can hold it, when you can't hold them, it's all the more powerful. So I think in this hour of sitting with self, I do have some letters to write to people. I have some letters to send back home to New York. I have letters of Thanksgiving, of forgiveness, of so many different types of letters. So I'm super excited about this letterhead that's coming in. I think that's just so important. So when you mentioned that a light bulb went off, and that's what I'll be working on. It's just writing letters and connecting with folks.
There's something about a letter, whether it's handwritten or typewritten, or even if you just print it from a word processing program, there's something I feel I can be more intimate with somebody at greater length, and I can take my time, and I say things I would never say in an email, probably wisely.
Oh yeah, and I remember not too long ago, a friend of mine who's also gay was working at a very conservative university here in Tennessee, a Christian college, and he was having a very difficult time, and I wrote to someone who has a position of influence. I sent her a typewritten letter on my good vintage letterhead, and I appealed to her. I was, applying to her for assistance. I appealed to this, I appealed to that. I, tried to explain the situation to her, and it was a beautiful letter. And all she sent me back was a pumpkin, a painted pumpkin, because that's her thing. She paints pumpkins. Sorry, that brought that back to me. I was so upset. I thought, do you know how hard it is to write a typewritten letter? You cannot make one error if you want it to look good. Otherwise you start over, especially if you're not using, white paper, and this paper was sort of a rose color, and I didn't have sort of rose colored white out. Anyway, she sent me back a pumpkin. That was her sort of response, and I'll never forget that. A typewritten letter for a pumpkin.
Hey, at least she gave you something.
I tried to think about it like that. I said,
how many letters have I written that I don't even get a response? How many mixtapes have I made that they don't even have a tape player? But yeah, actually, that's how I started typing in the first place. Is I bought my typewriter to write my my former lover, who was long distance at the time. So I just remember the romance of diving into the typewriter and writing out all my secrets and adorations and sending it across, the sea to her. And, it was a really magical thing. And yeah, letter writing is so next level. And I don't think a lot of people have necessarily I don't know, maybe the guts to like dive deep and write out their innermost fears and, you know, feelings and stuff. And I think that that's like the gift that we as poets and writers have, and why we're such like a good bridge for the general public. Because what we're doing is we're putting like words to feelings that people don't necessarily have access to in general. But yeah, I'm actually in a pretty nice correspondence with another one of us. I'm surprised he's not on here, Bill Keys. He was out in New York, but now he's somewhere in California temporarily. But we've got a pretty good correspondence going on. And I keep joking with him. I'm like, Bill, we should keep these so that we can publish them, so that we can have like a book someday, like all the letters that the beat poets and stuff would write back and forth, and, you know, stuff like that. But I guess I'm just like really into like the whole archiving and publishing and documenting like what we're doing and the relationships that we form, because in my mind, I think that we're just as noteworthy or like historical as like some of the other like groups of writers, like most notably like the beat poets, you know. And I don't know, I feel like they just existed during the right place at the right time. And more importantly, they were a community and a group that like collaborated, traveled together, inspired each other, were each other's enemies, you know. And I don't see any reason why the typewriter poet community can't go down in history the same way. I want our own shelf at a bookstore, dang it.
There's got to be an in-person convention someday.
There will be. And I think, you know, I keep all the letters that people send me. All of my, when I wrote my coming out letters to people, all of their responses, I have all of the envelopes. I kept them all. Even the very difficult ones from some sort of, you know, I was in a conservative evangelical community, and even the letters that are difficult to read because they were kind of amorphous, but you can see folks struggling, like, you know, I don't think they knew what to say, but they tried, and I still have all of their efforts, you know. I love a good, I would, my dream day would be to come home and open the mailbox and there'd be a letter from someone that I wasn't expecting. Oh, that is just, I would love that.
It's so interesting. So interesting to see your box, Kashif. I feel like one of the things I've been doing in quarantine has been like a little bit of a different project, but kind of archival work on self. I've been going through these boxes of old notebooks that go back to when I was 10 years old and reading my thoughts from the last 20 years and kind of understanding who I used to be and thinking about who I am in this moment in relationship to that. And part of that also is like all of the old like birthday cards from my parents and grandparents who recently passed away. Like old letters from lovers of various stages of life. And sort of, yeah, those encounters with other, but also with past self has been, I feel like quarantine has been such a time of self-reflection for those with the privilege for it to be a time of self-reflection. So I've been leaning into that really hard.
Yeah, I just, not to change the subject, but while I'm in a virtual room with the Richard Polt, I do have to say, you know, it's just, I collected my first, or bought my first typewriter I got from my godmother in New York in 2000, it was probably 2013. Anyway, when I moved to Tennessee to go to seminary, I started collecting for real. And I was able to find, oh my gosh, it was like exploring, you know, the British exploring Egypt and discovering, it was a treasure trove. And you could drive on the back roads and find typewriters everywhere for, you know, $10, $15, $20, $25, and you could negotiate. And I found great things. When I moved to Nashville, forget it. If you look on, I mean, everybody thinks that what they have is worth $500. It's like a typewriter desert here, you know? So I guess I just wanted to throw that out there to you as a
Richard, you're holding out on us.
As a leading collector, but that has been, you know, kind of disappointing. But when I have about 12 typewriters now, and I've given, you know, and sold and whatever. But I think when I'm ready to buy another, I will probably go to again to the back roads of Tennessee, and and some places risking not so nice encounters. But that's where the best typewriters are.
I know. I remember I answered this Craigslist ad for this IBM executive, which has like the proportional typeface. It's really beautiful. And I go there. It's in a bad neighborhood, and on the guy's door is like a target from a shooting range. And then you hear this vicious dogs, several dogs barking behind the door. So what do? Of course, I knock on the door because I need the typewriter. And it worked out fine, but yeah, we take risks for this noble cause.
Oh yes, we do. The first typewriter I bought in Tennessee was in Cleveland, and I answered it was a Craigslist ad for a Smith Corona. It must have been a Sterling, the brown one with the green keys. And this woman she was an older woman, and she invited me into her house, and I think there was a rifle somewhere behind the door. But the whole thing was just, for me as a person of color, new to the South, I thought, okay, what is going on here? But the typewriter was calling to me. I thought, for $25, I'll risk it. And of course it was fine. It was great. But yeah, we definitely will risk things for typewriters.
Well, I mean, the most exciting way to find them is out there in the wild. But if you ever want a safer way, you need a typewriter, hit me up, and I need to get rid of some things from my collection, and I have some nice machines. So I would love to get rid of them.
Very good. I'm going to take you up on that for real. Yeah.
Richard, I spoke with a guy in Santa Barbara shortly after quarantine, I think, who's kind of got a grant from the city to do a typewriter lending library.
Oh yeah, he has an Instagram account. Yeah. People look so happy on that account.
I found him on Instagram, but I think that's just such a beautiful project. And I mean, of course, part of his philosophy is I never expect to see them back. But as a way to kind of share that collection, I thought that was just awesome.
Yeah, that's really.
I've never bought I have bought a typewriter online once. It was a Skywriter, and I did end up passing it along. I traded it for like some boots and a belt at a vintage store. But what I did was kind of inspired by the guy that does a lot of my repair work, Matt over at Ace, is I wrote like little secrets and put it in the inside of the body of the typewriter and left it there so that they would know like what it had been used for in my possession, which was a trip down to New Orleans and New York. Because I'm always curious about like the soul of the typewriter, and like I love the story of like, like going and finding it, like, meeting these weird people and seeing what they used it for, or learning it was just like, being rescued from sitting in a closet for like 20 years or something. So that's always really exciting.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's great when you find like a little label with somebody's name deep in the typewriter, or sometimes some markings that might have been made in the original factory. Somebody wrote down their, checked by number 23, or their initials or something. It's really pretty magical.
Something about that imprint. Let me look back at our questions a little bit. What do you feel? Okay, we've got like 1 minute left, but hilarious. Let's jump into this. As we're in dialogue with the public on these machines, like, do we have a duty? Do we have a responsibility in this moment? Is there sort of an imperative there, or is it kind of a?
I think for me, like my motive is to use it as some sort of healing or reflection. Like I will not write poems that are negative or are to roast someone, even if it's like out of love. I'm just like, sorry, that's not my style. Like I don't do like mean, funny poems. Like I keep it positive, I keep it like affirmative, and I keep it like inclusive. So I think that for me, like, especially in this time when there's a lot of hatred and divisiveness going on and people are like really in it, and it's really like an us versus them, like it's even more important to me now to create a safe space for people to come and tell me what's really going on, but then put a positive spin on it and not just be like, we're all gonna die, They can read my other work if they want to hear that side of me.
Totally.
And I'll just say super quickly, I know we're like about to move on, but I have been very, very grateful for folks, if they couldn't get out there when the protests were going on and are still going on, like Iron Fox, Ian over at Iron Fox Typewriter in New Jersey, sent me a Smith Corona Skywriter, which was amazing to take, quite literally to take to protest with me. So I think that people do whatever they can. And even if you can't get out there, you know, helping a typewriter poet who's going out to write protest poetry is also an incredible gift.
I like the idea of like sharing typewriters, sending typewriters. I feel like, yeah, I did this for the last couple of years. I've been doing this initiative with the city of West Hollywood and queer poets, and that was something that, again, this June, kind of lending out typewriters for folks for that month was an interesting way to kind of connect and to feel like you're doing something, you know. Hi, Jack. Oh my goodness. I hadn't seen you in the wall of faces before, but now I do. I remember getting the message from you. Thank you all for jumping back in. Sorry to cut the breakout rooms short. I know those are often the most fruitful, and I'm, you know, just annoying and want to hear everything, and I'm very curious. What I'd love to invite for the last sort of 10 minutes that we're on, and then I want to be respectful of folks' time, and of course, you know, if you want to hang around and have an after party, that's fine. But I'd love to hear back from at least like one person from each group, maybe someone who hasn't spoken on them yet, and just hear how that discussion was, if you felt like there were any new thoughts that came up. What was it like to meet those folks? And I'll popcorn maybe popcorn to Kathy. I don't think we've heard much from Kathy.
Unmute. Hi. Yeah, it was really great. So to be in a Zoom with someone in my own city. KHG, the Spontaneous Prose Store, and I share, we're both in Toronto. So fun.
Had you been before?
No.
What?
No, I didn't know that. I know. Crazy. And just to hear other people and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And, you know, I often think, you know, I should be doing more. I could be doing more. There's more to do. And then, you know, we're all just kind of doing the best we can, given what's going on. And I'm so happy you did this because, you know, I work on my own, and even though I'm writing poems on the typewriter, on the spot, online as well, but there's, you know, once it's done, the person leaves and there's no sense of anything. Like, it's just, they're gone. When I'm doing it in person, you know, that person will walk by again and we'll have a moment, or I can get a feel, a sense as they walk away. The computer it's not the same. It's way better than I thought it would be. I thought I couldn't do it at all at first. I'm like, I'm not doing this online, but I can do it online. I am doing it online, but I'm alone. And so it's nice to be with all you folks and that do the same thing, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but when I tell people what I do, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that even exists. And then I say, no, there are others too. And so here you are, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you. I'll echo that. Like, the fact that we had 40 RSVPs, we've got, you know, 20 people at the end of 2 hours still in this dang Zoom room. Like, this is a community, and it's something that in this pandemic there's a lot that we lose, but one of the things that I think we gain is this is something that Jeremy, Typewriter Troubadour, and I have been talking about for 3 or 4 years now. And to then all be in virtual space and to go, oh, we can actually make this happen without having to fly across the country. Like, super grateful for that. Kat, you got all dolled up, and I would love, first of all, for you to just introduce like the Ella Fitzgeralds and your work there, and like for you and LA Marks to connect and all of that, but also to hear how your breakout room was. And you're on mute, my friend. The eternal curse of Zoom. There you go.
I was meowing my way through that. So I am the co-creator of the Zelda Fitzgeralds with my sister Kelly Grace Thomas, Vosjani, who some of you might know because she's like a real poet. I come from the events world, so I have taught myself to be a poet for events where I don't get to hire people. Usually those are the free events. But I have come through the last 3 years to become a poet also. The Zelda Fitzgerald started about 3 years ago. I worked in corporate events, and Kelly and I stole the idea from another one that we saw, as we all probably did. And then we refined it to ourselves. We do vintage stuff primarily in the corporate market. So we've done it in 5 states and about 20 cities. Which is a lot of fun because you get to hire people, which I love doing. I love hiring people for poetry because I feel like they're so happy to get paid. And it makes everybody happy. I always say that, like, I like giving poetry to muggles because like they realize how magical it is.
How was the breakout room? What did y'all talk about?
We talked about Joseph and his amazing like Winchester Mall poetry he does. And then we also talked about how Luke does like this awesome like rainbow typewriter ribbon, if anybody knows about that, which is called rainbowtypewriter.com, and it changes it all different colors.
That's you, Luke? Oh my God. Okay, we have to talk.
Yeah, so really cool. And Lila, unfortunately, was having some technical difficulties, but she seems to be doing pretty good during COVID because her job is pretty much the same. So
thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Luke, I was totally looking at the rainbow. Okay, I have business to do with you later. Jack, how was the breakout room for you? And also, hello, if you want to say hi and just introduce yourself.
You said me? Yeah, breakout room was fantastic. I'll be honest, I'm not a poet. I can't write to save my life. So it was really cool hearing about what those guys do and how they do it, how they've been able to make a career out of it. I was amazingly impressed by what they do and, learning terms I'd never heard before. It's really nice to hear that. It gives me inspiration to know, like, you can make a career out of doing whatever you love. It's nice.
Tell me a little bit, or tell us, I guess, a little bit of your story. I mean, I see all of the typewriters behind you. Like, what's going on, not a poet?
Yeah, well, I'm Jack. I'm 15 years old. I have been collecting, repairing, and restoring typewriters for the last 2.5 years. And recently I've been able to make, a solid business out of it. Currently I have 62 typewriters. I've owned over 90 machines. I've been able to make a really solid business out of this. I'm extremely proud of what I've been able to create. You may have seen me in the Zoom earlier from this angle.
That's right.
This machine, this is a 1928 Royal Model P that I've been swapping the Vogue typeface into.
Ooh.
And now I'm just working out the final kinks in that. I've been able to, my typewriters is my main obsession, but my other obsession is over here. This is my car. This is a 1972 Volkswagen Super Beetle. I'm in the process of restoring. The engine is in those bins and on that shelf, and some parts in the trash can. I've been able to afford the engine rebuild for that, which is an expensive thing for a 15-year-old. I've been able to pay for it all with typewriters and other odd jobs. So I'm really happy to do it.
That's so awesome. Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so much like yes.
Did
I
he
hope-
already put his contact information in the chat?
Yeah, how do we hire you, Jack?
I'll toss my Instagram in there.
Please.
I'll toss my Instagram in there. Tampa Typewriter.
Oh,
I'm
man.
Tampa Typewriter on Facebook and Tampa Typewriter on Instagram. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, officially, that's the best thing that's going to happen on this Zoom, unless Linda plays the dulcimer.
I'm getting spammed with follows here. That's like the 5th one I've gotten since I entered that in. Thank y'all. I appreciate it a lot.
Like every one of your posts.
I see that. Thank you, Kevin.
I'm sorry. It's like you just show up in the middle of like a sugar addicts meeting with like, oh, by the way, I'm a candy man. It's like, come on. You think you're gonna? I'm coming to Tampa. I'm like on my way.
Do it. I'll welcome you here. You can see the collection. Maybe buy a machine.
Oh man.
Maybe you're gonna be out of machines by the time I'm done.
Well, that'd be nice.
Look at Joseph. All right. Floor is open. Anyone else who would like to share? We are at 2 hours into the meeting.
Brian, could Kevin tell us what he's making?
Kevin can totally tell us what he's making. I'm also going to launch a quick poll with just sort of a question of what everyone would want to see next. And if the answer is like, I never want to see you again, that's cool too. But I would love to keep hosting stuff and making space for this community and for all of you like friggin' mind-blowing artists and humans. So here are some things that I think might be interesting to organize around, and if you have other better ideas, please put them in the doc. Please reach out and email me. I'll share all of my contact info there. So I'm launching that poll right now, and then yeah, Kevin, what are you doing?
Okay, so these are tiny little books that I'm folding that will eventually be trying to get this like to the side of the poll if you've got this full screen. But these are poems of a short stature for children and adults of all sizes. And in each of these guys, when they're done, are 4 tiny little poem books. This is a very cheesy beach poem book, but they're just tiny, adorable. This one's a space doctor poem book, but I like tiny things. So that's what but they take a ton of time. And to kind of tie this thread back into like the overall topic of the evening, that's a lot of what I've been doing with my time is like the process of hand binding a book is a little bit nuts to take on, but like I feel like this is this is the time to get into this kind of arting and crafting kind of project. So I've been going real deep on some new weird bookbinding experimental stuff that I'm like, it's been nice to have the craft that you can sit down and do, and it's like, oh, 5 hours is gone. Nope, that was 5 months.
How are they bound, Kevin? What are you using? I know you use like hairpins for some of them. You've got like all your materials.
These ones are all. I actually, when you say that I have all my materials, let me take you behind the scenes here. So this is this. I call this part the sound stage. So that's what I've been inside of this whole time. It's just like a tiny little easy up. I'm in a basement. Surprise. Then I got this workbench, and then this is all the bookbinding materials. So I've been working on a few different things.
And you're in Massachusetts right now, right?
Yeah. So when everything went sideways, I was in Florida, and like I had been nomadic for a while, and I didn't have what you would call a place to live. And Florida in general was very comfortable with the pandemic, I found. There were bars and chocolate shops that were like, no, we're essential services. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. And I don't, it took me like a month of hopping from job to job to job in remote location, where I was mostly just not doing poetry, but doing other stuff in exchange for like a place to sleep. And then right now I'm with my family, and I'm a really lucky man. They're incredibly supportive of my very strange life choice. And they were like, if you can't work, like stay here, do what you can do here, and we'll assess on the other side of the pandemic. So I'm really in a holding pattern that has like existential crises just like sprinkled right into it. But I highly recommend meditating, because that started and has helped me out over the past couple of weeks. And that's been a silver lining of being a poet in these times, is not so much like getting really dynamic about how I interact with my audience, so much as taking the time to get dynamic about how I interact with myself, which, you know, is more on the life side of things than the art or hustle side of things. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I've been totally in meditation world too since pandemic. Kevin, like, had not been before.
Oh, I just want to throw this out there. Actually, my sister runs a meditation school out of San Francisco, just like as a volunteer in her free time. And they've got a bunch of, I go on to their Zoom all the time, SF Dharma Collective. Maybe we can meditate together sometime. Or they're really great for new meditators if anybody's thinking about getting into it.
Add that to the next poll.
Oh yeah, let me throw that address in there.
I'm gonna hop off. I just wanted to say bye to everyone and thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to meet more of you soon. And please, if any of you are coming to Louisville, you know where to come and stay and visit and have a typewriter home. Not forever, just like a visit.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for saying yes to this, and like just helping to convene and to gather all of this. And just the survey results, like, it sounds like small breakout rooms, yes, the biggest thing, but more keynotes from specific poets was like that. Project-based gatherings and sharing social media and support were the other most successful things. So thank you for modeling so beautifully what that could look like.
My pleasure. Have a great night, y'all.
Good night. Good night.
Bye, Lisa. Thank you, Brian.
How about that?
That's a fly too. Super nice seeing everyone.
Good night,
Bye,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Kathy. Have a good night.
You as well.
Look at Jeremy's cat. Wait, Jeremy, can you bring the cat back? We got to have a cat on an Instagram before we close out.
This is my new sidekick. His name is Jack Caro Cat. He's a little bit ornery right now. Just a cat on the road. He'll come out sometimes for poetry, every now and then.
So
There you
good.
go too. Great to see all you guys and meet a lot of you. Thank you.
Great to see you, Richard.
Bye, folks. I'm heading out.
Nice meeting you.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye,
friends. Next time.
Take care, all. I'll send out a follow-up email. Much love. Any final things?
Thank you again so much, Brian, for bringing us together with all this. This is awesome.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for coming out
I know.
in force. Oh my goodness.
It feels, I feel connected, and it just, I think I would love to do this again and just, you know, be able to check in with everybody, because it just reinvigorates everything when you're hearing these